Hi, this is Barry McCoy with McCoy's Bad Boy Rods. Today I'm going to show you how to do a custom valve cover installation and wire loom. This particular car is a 1968 Oldsmobile, and it was my brother's car. We're restoring and getting it ready to sell. But what I wanted to show you is I tried to come up with a custom valve cover set that would look like it was a muscle car, but yet at the same time do the car justice. So I came up with the Oldsmobile script, put the 350 rocket on it, and then along with that we did a McCoy's Bad Boy Rods logo in the Wirelooms. And we're going to show you how to set this whole thing up. Now, those that are familiar with hoses are asking, where'd you get the covers? Well, these are Chevy valve covers, small block stock heights. They're aluminum and they can be machined on, which is what we did. What I did is I came up with a adapter plate that I took the measurements off the engine so we could mount this to the motor. I've already put the Oldsmobile gasket on and put some sealer on it so that when I do the installation we don't have to mess with that. So I've kind of pre-done this, and on the wire looms on the bottom side you'll get a kit with your wire looms. You don't have brackets in that wire loom. I like to figure out where I want those to set on the valve cover, and I pre-install those outside of the car, especially if you have fenders and stuff on it, which that'll be finished this week on this car. So we're doing it before we get the fenders on. Make it much easier for access. Again, this video is for the installation of custom valve covers and the adapter plates, and also how to set up wire looms. If you want to see our product, you can go to badboyrods.com, or you can give us a call at 260-637-2700. Now to the installation. As you can see right now, that's the stock Oldsmobile head. And I'm going to come up a little bit closer here so that I can work and not be in the way of the video. Pardon me for that. So here we go. Our wires are already done. We set up the other side already, which is finished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the adapter plate and make sure the holes go to the top like they're supposed to here. This is a little tricky to get it in. It's got all these hoses coming around. So I have to slide it in gently. And drop it on in. And then using the T-handled wrench and the bolts. These are 1/4 flathead bolt. We're just going to start all the bolts first. Here we go. When I was growing up as a kid, my dad always said, when you're assembling something, you should always put all your bolts in first. Don't tighten them. Get them all lined up. And then once you get it lined up the way you want, then go ahead and tighten them. Today, we don't have as much trouble with that because we have machines that are CNC controlled. Once we get a location that we know is good and we put our flatheads in, the flatheads will actually guide this into place. It's not rocket science. And once everything's prepped, it took me a few minutes to prep it. But once everything's prepped, this installation goes pretty quickly. The other side I had trouble with because I'm dealing with the AC unit over here against the wall, and that makes it hard when you're trying to slip a wire loom in there. You have to have everything kind of pre-adjusted. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to tighten these evenly. Back and forth. Snugging them up. I like to do something once and not have to go back to it again, so just take your time. Don't forget any steps. That's a bad angle there, so you may have to use another wrench to get back in there. I have one setting here. in case I need it. And just keep going back and forth until you get it. A lot of times on valve covers, people think you have to torque them down and squeeze the gasket until there's nothing left. This is not true. I already have sealer on it. And it only takes about 7 pounds of pressure, and that's not very much. I can get that with my fingers just doing this with the T-handle. I'm watching the gasket squeeze up nicely. We've also done this for 69 Firebird with our Flaming Skull valve cover. I also have that on my website and Facebook. Very nice car. But we did that because you can't get custom valve covers for Pontiacs. So now that I have that, I'm going to reach over here and grab my valve cover. And once again, gently, and ever so carefully, you may have to move some stuff out of the way, just rotate it or whatever. Slide it down in. Careful of your wiring. Oh, you know, it would have helped had I would have grabbed that Chevy valve cover gasket. That's the next thing required. So if I provide you a kit and you're interested in this Oldsmobile adapter kit to put a custom design of Chevy valve covers or use our American flags, you'll get the Oldsmobile gasket, you'll get the adapters, and then of course the valve cover set with our Chevy valve cover gasket. This gasket's a silicone rubber gasket with a metal insert, and you can reuse it. It doesn't require any sealer, and I don't put any on. Two things are going on here. We have a pretty nice Oldsmobile head that looked like it was flat. Secondly, we have a billet adapter that is a great surface to bolt up to. Now on the tops of these, because of the adapter depth or thickness I should say is only 3/8, I use the 3/4 inch bolt on the top. And on the bottom I use the 1 inch bolt because I use the Wirelooms adapters thick enough, and the I use 2 washers as a bearing surface. And once I slide that Wirelooms on there, it takes up the difference as far as the length of the bolt's concerned. But if you ran into trouble, you could always put different length bolt on there. So what I do is I slide washer, stainless steel bolt in. I always put the cut surface, the die cut, up because I don't want to cut the paint on the valve cover. But I want to make sure that I have a bearing surface. And basically I'm going to slide this down in. Now one thing I noticed right here is we're having some trouble with the steering shaft coming down. And that may make it a little difficult to assemble this. So I'm going to back up just a second. I got a little bit of a trick. I bring the wires up to the top. I make sure I keep them in order. I notice like one of these looks like it's not in order. And sometimes you may have to actually undo one or something. And I get these up towards the top. And then what I do is I feed them in just like this. Get it fed in. And this one. It may not cooperate that well with it because it's just the way it is. And I may even undo this one here. I'll get them back in order. That's not going to be a problem. It's a nice thing about GM. The firing order is pretty simple. And last but not least, I'll bring the small one there. I'm going to grab the other side of my Wirelooms, and I'm going to wiggle these down into position. Now they're all kind of jumping out there. It seems a little tight here. Might end up just pulling all those off. thought I had them in order, but that's just the way it goes sometimes when you're doing this. And the neater you can keep your wire or firing order and your wire looms when you're setting this up, the easier it is going to be on you to put these in. So some people may get confused and they may not be that good at it or familiar with the setup. So just mark your wires if you have to take them off. Sometimes you can just mark them 1, 2, 3, 4. That way you know from front to back where they go. On a Oldsmobile or GM setup, the wiring firing order is actually on the manifold itself, and it's 18, 43, 65, 72. I remember that when I was a kid and haven't forgot it since. It just makes it easy to trace your wires and know where you're at. So now that I have that, the wires will actually slide through without a problem. And I just have to start lowering it down into position and tucking things in. I'm just going to go ahead and pull all these out. I do not want to scratch my valve cover at all. So I'm going to be very careful. Now I got it tucked down in there, dropped in sweet. Okay, so take my, I kind of showed you it this way. I knew this was going to happen. This is the way I had to do the other side. But this is what happens sometimes when you're doing a setup and you spend a little money on these kits, and you want to be very careful you're not scratching them all up, because those are the type of things that, you know, gets discouraging. And so just be careful, take your time. Now I've got them fit in place, and just have to find the hole. Don't cross thread, just take your time. It felt a little weird there, but then the gasket pushing it around, or any number of things. There we go. Now, like I said before, snug them. Just get it to where it starts to tighten up, and then start going back and forth. Don't do it all at the same time. And then basically just put your wires in, pull them out to the desire, to where you get them to where they're just sitting there nice and neat. This particular one does not have a breather. It has 2 PVCs because this engine has an oil fill tube in it. So the last thing we will do is put the PVC grommet and the PVC in, and that will finish up the valve cover set. And as you can see, the valve cover set looks real nice. I hope this video took well and that you were able to see everything. Again, this is Barry McCoy with McCoy's Bad Boy Rods, and you can visit us at badboyrods.com and check out our custom valve covers for Chevy, Corvettes. Our Oldsmobile products aren't on there. It's not something we've advertised yet, but if you're wanting something like this, just give us a call, 260-637-2700, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it and about your project. Thank you for watching my video. This is Barry McCoy.